All right, everyone. The time is now 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. And this meeting is now called to order. Please stand and follow Commissioner Rose in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thank you, Commissioner Rose. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Austin?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
Rose?
Here.
Scheffler?
Here.
Sheath?
Here.
Vashani?
Here.
Chair Stahira?
Here. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the last two regular meetings. Do we have any corrections or errors or omissions? All right, seeing none.
Chair, would you like two motions or a sweep motion?
Can we vote on them all at the same time?
I would do them separately.
Let's do them separately. So for the first set of minutes, the ones from March 12th, 2025, do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We can take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, with that, the motion carries. Let's vote on the next set of minutes.
I'll move to approve April 9th minutes from a regular meeting.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Are there any corrections, omissions? All right, we can do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No abstentions. All right, with that, the motion carries. Now we're going to proceed to the public input portion of tonight's meeting. This is the time and place to discuss any items that are not on the agenda. Just as a reminder, we can't discuss these items, but we can use those to inform our decision about what goes on future agendas. Does anyone wish to speak during this public input portion of the meeting? All right, seeing none, the public input portion of the meeting is now closed, and we can proceed to the public hearing portion. For public hearings, we have one public hearing item on the agenda today. First up is PH1, which is an application for a conditional use permit, CUP 2025-0004. The subject property is 939 West Huntington Drive, with Kin Cow Thai Eatery as the applicant. It's for a Type 41 state alcohol and beverage control license to serve beer and wine at an existing restaurant. I believe, Brenda, you have the staff report. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair, and good evening, Commission members. So the first item tonight is a conditional use permit for a state alcohol beverage control Type 41 license to allow the incidental sale and on-site service of beer and wine for on-site consumption at an existing sit-down restaurant called Kin Cow Thai Eatery. And the site is located at 939 West Huntington Drive within a freestanding multi-tenant building located within the Monrovia Gateway Shopping Center and is zoned as regional, sub-regional commercial. So food service will be offered throughout all hours of operation. The restaurant provides a wide range of Thai cuisine options, including noodles and curry dishes, various sides, and non-alcoholic beverages. State approval is also required for the sale and consumption of alcohol on site. This includes that the restaurant have a full-service kitchen during operating hours and certification be obtained by managers and services through the ABC's Responsible Beverage Service Training Program. Staff conducted a site visit to the restaurant and confirmed that the layout of the business reflects an operating bona fide eating establishment. As we can see, the floor plan shows a total of 10 tables and 18 chairs. Staff also obtained some pictures of the restaurant on the day of the site inspection, as we can see here. Now, standard conditions include that any changes or intensifications done to the floor plan be an amendment to the CUP, and window signs be placed so that there is a clear and unobstructed view of the interior. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit for incidental sale and service of beer and wine for on-site consumption at this location. That concludes my presentation, and the applicants are here in the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the commission for staff? Just one from me. Is this in line or different in any way from the recent Type 41 CUPs that we've approved?
It's pretty standard. There's nothing different about this application. I believe there's been previous approved CUPs for beer and wine service for other restaurants at this site.
Great. All right. If there's no more questions from the commission at this time, this is the time and place for public input regarding PH1. We'll accept testimony in the following order: the applicant, if they wish to speak, then persons in favor, then anyone with concerns, and then the applicant will have a chance to respond. And just some reminders, please come to the podium and just state your name if you would like to speak. Would the applicant like to speak? Sure. Okay. Please go ahead.
Pardon me if I do something wrong. Anyway, Chalin Durongdich, I'm part owner of the King Cow Thai Eatery. I only have one question. When are you guys going to visit us? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody opposed or persons with concerns? Assuming the answer is no. With that, we don't need to rebut anything. So any questions? Oh, the public testimony portion of this public hearing item is closed. Do we have any more questions from the commission for staff or the applicant? All right, seeing none. If there's no further discussion, do I have a motion?
I move to approve CUP 2025-004 with conditions as presented in staff report.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's please proceed to a roll call vote.
Yes. Commissioner Austin?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Scheffler?
Yes.
Sheaf?
Yes.
Kashani?
Yes.
Chair Stahira?
Yes. With that, the motion carries. Is there appeal language?
Yes, thank you. All items of all public hearings of the Planning Commission may be appealed if filed in writing to the City Council, and there is a 10-day appeal period. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Brenda. With that, we have completed the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. We have no administrative report items on the agenda, so I think we can move right along to the Community Development Director's report.
Yes, thank you very much. So this next item I just wanted to report to the commission on is our Monrovia's annual report on the status of the general plan. This is a standard report that Monrovia files every year, as well as every other city here in California. It is a requirement. And there's two purposes. This report really covers the status of the housing element, our implementation. Are we implementing the housing plan that's adopted, as well as tracking our RENA progress on attaining units. And it gets submitted to HCD every year. Generally, it's in April. This year, we got a little extension because of the wind and fire event we had earlier this year. That's why you're getting it a little bit later this year. But it also goes to the State Office of Planning and Research, and that really helps them track, public planning policies. So it's a planning tool as well, and it also covers other portions of the general plan, not just the housing element. This report was submitted to the City Council at their meeting in May 6th, and it was accepted by the City Council and then later sent up to the state. So real briefly, I think the commission has seen this table many times. This is the most current table, though. This is all of the numbers for the 2024 calendar year for housing development. What it shows is our goal for the RHNA, and that's an 8-year cycle. We're about halfway through it, and we've already closely achieved almost all of those units. So our goal is 1670. We're halfway through, and we have a total of 1,168 units. The second piece of the story by looking at this table, as you can see, is the majority of the units that Monrovia is capturing are all in the above moderate. And that's one of the reasons why we've are doing a lot of work on inclusionary housing and other policies and municipal code amendments to, get affordable housing in our community. The annual report used to be a very simple report. It has become now this monster Excel spreadsheet that our April Kia Extraordinaire helps us with every year. It tracks the development of housing at each phase of the development process. And it also looks to see, are there any issues in the planning process that could be delaying the approval of a project or the issuance of a permit or the inspection process? Are we issuing the final certificates of occupancy? I think Monrovia is in a very good point. You can see the trend over the last couple of years. We're still seeing a good amount of units that are being applied for, that are being approved and entitled. And then this in 2024, you can see we issued a C of O for 497 units. The majority of those units were the Alexan project.
Do you want to entertain questions while you're doing this, or should we wait to the end?
Yeah, we can go for it. Yeah.
So the ones like for the Alexan or the Alexan Marmont or
That's
those
right.
those would show up much earlier in the applied and entitled, and then the C of O would come a lot later, right?
That is correct. So,
So like 2020 probably, right?
well, the Alexan, it was a 2020 approval project, and I think COVID added some delay. There was some uncertainty, and that's why we saw them submitting into, I think, building plan check 2021, 2022.
And
And that's why you don't see them in, well, actually, it was probably in 2020, maybe they got right in, and then they paused, and they wait, and they do a plan check extension, and then they proceed.
so is that a blip, or is that a typical timeline of?
It's hard to know what's typical because of the way the markets have been, the things that happen in life, like COVID. Those are all factors in how things move. But for the most part, when you're looking at a big project, those are the ones that get impacted easily. For the most part, when we look at other types of housing, like ADUs, for example, those have been continuous, steady. HCD, when we were doing our housing element, had this concern that we would tap out. We were doing really good numbers early on, but they felt, you're not going to be able to keep up that rate. Our goal for our housing element was 232. Again, that's for the full 8 years, and we're making good progress on getting there. So, another question?
So, looking at the total number of units and the affordability, so we're real heavy on the moderate. what's HCD's position on that? Like, we're making our numbers, but not at the affordability levels that they've prescribed. So how does that,
That's a great
are they
question.
like, we're fine, you're doing anything, or?
Well, so part of the initial housing element process is looking at everything the city does. What are our governmental constraints internally? What might be external constraints? What are code provisions that may be influencing the development of housing? And then we develop a housing plan, and that's part of the housing element. As long as we're showing, as Monrovia is showing, that we are doing everything within our capacity to process housing, to incentivize affordable housing or require it through an inclusionary housing, we're in good shape. We won't be penalized for that. So Monrovia is not required to build these units. We're just required to make sure we have a framework so that they can be submitted for, approved, and built.
So you might sum this up at the end. So if I'm getting ahead of you, let me know. On a scale of, giant pat on the back to we're going to revoke your housing element, where are we on that spectrum?
Well, I think we're
From
in really, I'm
HCDs.
feeling very good. I mean,
From- yeah.
HCD they are looking at, they have a whole housing unit that looks at compliance. And they do check in, and I think they're reviewing each year's APR a little bit more carefully. There's a lot of information you can look. In June, we'll be able to look at the state's website and see kind of the results of all the cities and how they kind of compare to each other. So I'm looking forward to looking at that. It'll be released, I think, at the end of June. But I think we're doing a phenomenal job. So thank you.
Sherry, just before you go on, we would see an influx in our, occupancy load or permitted to occupy because we have two, if not a third project going. So our 2025 numbers should look substantially increased from some other years because those kind of go in cycles. Am I correct on that
You're
assumption?
absolutely correct. So we have two projects right now in Station Square that are still under construction. Station Square South has 296 units. They are going to be releasing this year their first phase, probably within the next 2 months. And we have the 127 Pomona, and that one is, do you remember how many units? 232. And they're also doing very well, so we're feeling good.
Potential of like 500 this year.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Can I really, and for those, what percentage would be very low, or extremely, I don't know how deep the affordability is, but like.
So for Station Square South, the city did not have an inclusionary housing requirement. On that project, all their units were proposed market rate, but there are other benefits that we built into that we negotiated into that project, like the new access, southern access to the metro. 127 Pomona, John, do you recall?
There's 13 very low and 12 low income units.
Yeah, and that project, we were able to capture those units through the density bonus. That site wasn't 2 acres. They wanted to do a mixed-use project on less than 2 acres. That required, they needed a waiver or a concession, so they offered affordable housing to get that. And then, aside from just the number of units that are being produced and that tracking, the state again looks at what else is the city doing, and that's the housing plan. So since we've adopted the housing element, there's been a lot of new ordinances that have come before the commission in the last couple of years, removing the CUP requirement, updating this year the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, building in approving objective development design standards for multifamily housing, creating this ADU webpage that's now up and running and will continue to get better as we get more submittals. At the last city council meeting on June 3rd, the city council approved on first hearing the inclusionary housing ordinance. That's going to be moving on to second reading next week. And the city's currently still working under the density bonus ordinance, and we hope to have that this summer to the commission. But in addition to just the housing plan, the items that the city said we're going to do, I think you'll find that city staff, not only in the community development department, but in the city manager's office, are looking for ways to complement and bring in affordable housing to the city. One really, I think, important project that the city manager's office took the lead on was their partnership with LA County. It was LA County Homelessness Authority in coordinating the effort to convert a hotel to the interim housing shelter with 35 beds. That was the Pathway Home project. Our community development department is still actively working through that entitlement at 701 South Myrtle Avenue. I suspect that one will likely come before the commission this year. The city also has, in our Neighborhood and Business Services Division, we run the CDBG program, Community Block Development Block Grant Program. In recent years, we've increased the number of projects that really are help towards the preservation of existing affordable units in the city. And there are more projects underway that I believe will be coming before the commission.
Sherry, is the funding for the CDGB, is that a federal funding block
That is
grant?
federal funding.
How is that going to be? Do we have
Well,
any
we are
insight
having-
on how that's coming along?
Well, we are having a conversation tomorrow. Yeah. So there's still some uncertainty, but we haven't been told we are not going to receive it. So that's positive.
Better than a no.
But you have prior funds from prior years, or have you guys already exhausted all your? CDBG?
Based on our current program, we get our allocation, and we've been using them on projects on a year-to-year basis. So
So you've exhausted it, so you're waiting for like the next award.
yes, we use it on a year-to-year basis.
One thing I don't see on this list is, was it 35 affordable units? No, I think it was, oh, no, that was the 35 beds. The converting what was
Oak
going to be
Park.
the Oak Park.
Oak Park, yeah.
thing.
So the Oak Park project was originally looking to redevelop that entire site. They've actually pulled that project from their entitlement and began working with a developer to convert their market rate units to affordable housing units. It would be 100% affordable. And the city council did adopt a resolution for the bond issuance to support that earlier this year. And one of the concerns of staff and the council was the preservation of this existing senior homes housing units that were deed restricted, and those would be preserved as well, which was a huge win. What I also didn't include here, which we'll be giving updates, and it will also be in next year's APR report, is what comes to be with that property at 222 East Cypress. We're currently working with the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments on doing some feasibility studies and to see if that site can support additional housing. So we're excited to see what that brings. And then moving away from just housing in general, I think the city's done a great, job of using our planned development zoning strategies to preserve existing units, doing adaptive reuse. Last year, we issued the approvals for 508 through 512 South Ivy Avenue. That's the Baker Homes across the street that will convert to a hotel. That zoning, though, did preserve the residential use should the hotel use not be viable at any point in the future. Part of our land use element does focus on historic preservation, and last year we did 4 new historic landmarks with Mills Act contracts. We have been working alongside the fire department. They are doing the heavy lifting on preparing a local hazard mitigation plan that's underway. I think we'll probably be seeing that later this year. And then If the commission remembers, we had a new environmental justice element in 2022, and that the Community Services Department has been really taking a very, close look at other parks, and they have several park projects now that are all underway. I think last week, myself and I think I saw a few of the commissioners at the Satoru Sunishi Park Development kickoff. So that one's a new park by the Chick-fil-A that's under development. So with that, I'd like to conclude staff's report, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Director Bermejo. Do we have any other?
Sure, I do. Got a
questions?
quick,
Yeah.
the local hazard mitigation plan, does that ever come through us?
You
I don't
know,
recall anything like that ever, but
I don't, it may, at this point, I'll say it may, because we may be actually amending our safety element concurrently with it to update the local hazard fire maps. So the fire chief and I are still working through those details.
if not, that'd be a good brick and mortar. I was
Oh,
looking for
absolutely.
Something like that to incorporate. in
Absolutely.
educating us.
Absolutely.
Would there be any impacts on the building code potentially
Well, the building code.
following?
There, we are going to be starting a new building cycle. And, right around this time is when we start, our building team starts looking at our codes and preparing for the new cycle. So, and it's not just building, but also fire codes. And so that will come to the city council either December, because to have it in effect by January, so.
the adoption of a new uniform building code / like a fire code.
Right. Right. Yeah, so we'll have some other things to keep us busy and bring to the commission to report on. That's not housing.
Just circling back to the RENA and
Yes.
the fact that, most of the units that are being produced are in the above moderate category, like Commissioner Brown said. At the end of a housing cycle, when we may not reach our RENA allocation for the very low and low income levels, what happens at that point?
I don't foresee any penalty. So in prior years, as long as the city is producing housing, the city cannot force development, right? We have to rely, there's so many factors. There's the economy, there's land prices, there's the cost of construction. When we do our housing cycle, when we're preparing for the next housing cycle, we'll be looking at, we're first going to figure out we're going to be allocated a new number, and we're going to have to evaluate, can we still capture housing in our existing sites inventory? So one of the things the planners do with our housing consultant is we look at where in the city do we think we can capture more development. Monrovia has been very lucky because we haven't had to rezone increased density in any areas. We've been able to sustain enough land zoning to accommodate our RENA. We'll see. I mean, these are things that we follow with the state, and it's hard to say mid-cycle what we're going to be, where we're going to be in 4 years.
I was just gonna suggestion, and I'm sure your consultant is helping you with this, but you can also buy affordability, right? So some cities do that. You offer them, I don't know, you waive a fee here and there, and then you can record covenants, so you can still capture units that have already been built that we may have missed during whatever cycle.
Oh, absolutely. So once we get our, part of the inclusionary housing ordinance is, a component of that is establishing the fee, setting up this fund where we can start collecting money to assist with other affordable housing, maintain affordable housing. Those are definitely things that we are keeping our eye on.
Sherry, because I know the state doesn't understand every little city. There's so many cities in the state. does it ever come to a point, especially with small cities that only have so much land, that you can tell the state, we have no more land to build on to meet the requirements that you're requiring of us, that you pull out of a hat? I mean,
Right.
does that ever happen?
Well, I mean, I'm sure, yes, there's a lot of people who are,
I mean,
who are
there's just-
constantly, you know.
There's so much land.
There's
and-
only so much we can do. And and again, the measurement is really, even if we don't get all those units in those categories, right? Are we trying? And I think that's the measurement. That's the measurement.
Go ahead, Gary.
Sure, do you ever foresee anything coming out of the state based on what we used to have? As far
Like
as
redevelopment,
these
or-
yeah, I mean, I know that was taken away by the, yeah, but anything that's based on redevelopment standpoint, that was a huge,
Yeah. Yeah, not at this time. I mean, I haven't heard of anything that's,
You're talking about sources of funding,
Tax
basically,
increment
to
funding.
yeah,
Oh.
tax increment.
taking, yeah.
to
They
support
were
the
huge.
production of
They
these.
were a huge fund.
Yeah, no, they've come up with some alternatives, but they're not taking off the way, our old redevelopment model as we know it took off. They've tried, but nothing that I can think of has been as successful as that model.
One more question, just about the things that we are doing to try to motivate production of these lower income level housings. Are we collecting the right data to know if the things that we're doing are working?
so we
Or how-
are starting to.
or what impact they're
Yeah,
having.
so absolutely. So I think a lot of the policies that we've done this year and last year, it might be too soon to know what's going to happen. We have to wait. Even with the inclusionary housing ordinance, we got to give it some time to understand whether it's working or not. I can say that our team is still getting a lot of calls. We're talking with prospective project proponents who are interested in doing housing, still interested in doing affordable housing. So I don't feel like we're drying up without, housing projects. Our team works closely with the San Gabriel Valley COG. There's a planning meeting we do once a month. The COG has this incubator program where they are using state funds to do various programs to help local cities who don't have a lot of staff to work on regional, efforts that we all can benefit from. I think I lost my train of thought, but
One of the things I was thinking about was, I believe you made a comment in the past about ADUs, how we
yes.
weren't gathering the rent that piece of data about rent that would be charged for an ADU, but we started doing that a little while ago.
we have last year we redid our ADU application this year. So that application, we request for that information. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. This year, we went a step further and actually had staff on the phone following up, doing phone calls.
And that's one example, but there's a lot of things that we're
Absolutely.
doing here with inclusionary housing, with the density bonus. So knowing how well things are working, I think, is important.
Yeah, and there's other state laws that are also working alongside what the city's doing. One of them is SB 330, and that's housing replacement. So if you have a multifamily housing project that exists today, developer comes in and wants to demolish those units, they have to actually evaluate the incomes of the residents of the multifamily housing development for the last 5 years to determine if any of those units were occupied by someone of an affordable income level. And if they were, then those units have to be preserved as affordable units. And that's an effort so we don't lose. And
Yeah.
that was kind of what the Oak Park project was up against, because that was an existing housing project that had a requirement, I want to say like in the 86 units would have had to be rebuilt into that. And I think, the cost of building that new project out, it wasn't worth it in the end, and they were able to sell the property to someone who could make them all affordable through other different programs and funding, so.
One last quick comment. The longer you keep this.
Let me change the slide to the thank you slide.
Because you guys are talking and I'm looking. So I'm noticing that these are not deed restricted. Many of them are non-deed restricted. So in essence, it's kind of a false.
All of
because
the
they can-
units.
Once there's turnover, there's no obligation for them to keep these.
So the units that are,
Maybe the 13 from 2022.
Those are all deed restricted.
Very low, that's deed.
All
And
of them.
12.
deed restricted,
So those are the only deed restricted that we have.
the 10,
The
yeah.
10 is non, yeah, so 2024 is not, all the 2024s are non-deed restricted. so.
Okay, yeah, so those 10 non-deed restricted are ADUs, and state law doesn't allow us.
Oh, okay, so
To
we
deed
don't get to that
restrict
nuance. Okay,
ADUs, yeah.
so some of these, okay, so these include ADUs,
Correct.
not multifamily
That is
units.
every housing type.
Oh, it's every, okay, okay. So we don't, so
Single-family homes.
all of the 47 this year could be ADUs,
Yes,
right, arguably?
yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, well, I guess for purposes of HCD, it doesn't matter, right? Like,
No.
so HCD is like, we don't care the form of housing, it could be any form of housing.
Absolutely, and they view ADUs as an affordable housing type, which is why we've done so much work to update our ordinance to streamline ADU production.
So can I ask, how do you know the affordability of an ADU? Typically, they're not rented, they're
They're, the
provide you
majority,
with a lease, or how do you then come up with this? data?
so we do a phone call to the property owner. If they're using it for a family member and there's just no rent, they're using it for like their son and his new wife have moved in, then that translates into affordable. And there's a table and calculations that we collect rental rates and put them into a calculator that HCD provides the city. So there's a technical component that qualifies it
Okay.
for us.
Okay. Okay. Is it possible that, I don't know, just for my edification, because I enjoy this kind of stuff, can we get a breakdown of like what are, multifamily, single family, ADU?
Oh, the
I'm
overall?
curious. Yeah, I'm curious to know, like, what are we doing in our city?
Absolutely. So for
I
this
want to know, are
last,
we doing all ADUs?
we
And
are.
If we are, then that's what it, that's how we're
This
satisfying
last
this
housing
requirement.
cycle, 2024, the majority of our housing applications were ADUs. I think we had a few handful of single-family homes. In prior years, what we see are large multifamily housing developments, so Station Square development. We see very few, we've been seeing in recent years, very few smaller multifamily developments. A typical development type that's low-density multifamily is like a 4-unit planned unit development.
We've had a few
A
planned unit
handful.
developments
Those are
in
just a
the
handful.
last few years.
But the majority of our production has been ADUs and then the larger projects.
Okay. And I don't mean to beat this and I'll be done after this, but we have 2 large multifamily projects which total around 500 units. And from 500 units, all we got out of it was 12
Yes.
affordable units. Okay.
And the reason why is because at the time, the city did not have an inclusionary housing ordinance.
Okay.
We were we were able to get the units that we did get through the developer's application of the state density bonus.
Okay.
Yeah, density bonus for one of the properties, right? And then the other one, I think the density bonus didn't exist or
Oh,
wasn't,
well,
or they didn't take advantage of it.
They didn't need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Are we encouraging, okay, I promise this really is my last. Are we encouraging them to possibly apply for like project-based vouchers with the housing authority? Because that's another way to kind of get a small piece of affordable units. I understand you need market rate for the project to be viable, but this is another way where inclusionary or the city doesn't need to be involved, where like the county can kind of step in and say, well, you know, here, we'll help you pay for like 10 units. So, you know, maybe we get,
We could probably supply that information. We wouldn't be able to put it into a condition of approval.
yeah.
But with the inclusionary housing ordinance, those will be conditioned and deed restricted.
Okay, I'm done.
Quick question,
Mr. Austin.
but
No,
there's
this
also,
is
there's
great.
a project on Evergreen that hasn't come to fruition yet. And that project, if I recall,
the Arroyo.
had a
20,
number of
yeah.
affordable or low income or income project, and then they came back when they acquired, and we added some more units, and they put some low income units in there on top of that, so but that thing hasn't come to fruition yet.
Correct.
That one was actually doing a good job, and kind of happy when we saw them come back. I said, they acquired some more property, we're adding that, and we're doing that. That was a good thing. The last question on this. SCAG or COG, do they tabulate or give the cities like a rundown of, like the San Gabriel Valley, how everybody's doing? So we can see comparables. I mean, we have some room for improvement, but we might not be bad at all. Or we might be bad. I don't know where we fall on that. Do they provide that data so we
So
can?
the state does. So
The
we,
policymakers, the planners, the
Absolutely.
planning commission, and the citizens see where we're at, comparables, because somebody might be really horrible.
right. So in previous years, Monrovia was pretty much at the top because of our general plan. We had really put the zoning in place. So when the rail arrived, development took off. A lot of the cities, when the rail came, they just started assembling their general plans. The state's website, once these APRs are all loaded, then we can draw some reports and maybe bring those back to the commission just for additional information. But I'm interested to see how we did in comparison to our neighboring cities.
Specifically comparable size. and
Absolutely.
Social economic things, because you're not going to compare it. Well, I guess if you did it per capita, the city of LA is way out of whack. Like if we're using something, or Pasadena's a big city compared to Monrovia,
Right.
but if we see our comparables, we might be doing
Yeah.
good, bad, or we can see
Yes.
see how we are.
But I do feel that Monrovia is doing good based on our production. I think our teams, working with the commission and the council, we're really taking in everyone's input. I think, working on that inclusionary housing ordinance, I cannot tell you how many of our staff contributed to that. And I felt the commission and the council was very thoughtful to gather each aspect of doing all the surveys, what other cities were doing, what the developers felt about it, what the general public felt about it. So I think we continue to follow the Monrovia way, and that has always brought us success. So I'm hopeful.
Seems
So-
we are. Sorry.
I was just going to say, one of the things that you said triggered another question in my mind, and it's mostly a rhetorical question. But you said we saw that the rail development was coming, and we said, okay, here's an opportunity to adjust the zoning and increase density in a thoughtful way. And so all of that was in place, so we could hit the ground running when the rail project was done. What is the next thing that is like that?
We are
And not
thinking-
necessarily
yeah.
increasing
I
density,
don't wanna-
but
Yeah.
a thing where our zoning or the city's plan needs to be adjusted for a substantial change.
Absolutely. So right now, internally, we're looking at several areas. I don't want to really talk about it publicly yet, but the planners are always thinking, and we're always planning. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and
all
this
I
is
was
on
gonna say.
the decades level, right? Not just
Maybe in the next couple of
years.
years, yeah. We really want to make sure that by the time we're preparing our next housing element, we're not scrambling.
Yeah, great. It's good to hear.
Yeah.
The Oak Park housing developments is definitely a good
development for our city in terms of our numbers we need, because that's going to definitely add units that we would not otherwise have. I mean, I think in general, comparing our city to other cities, this is a continuous issue.
Absolutely.
We're actually doing better than most cities when I've seen numbers I've seen across the state. The Oak Park housing development will definitely move that forward. Do you know how long that project's going to be to be able to do that conversion?
That I'm not sure, but we can definitely follow up on that.
Thank you.
Okay, have we exhausted our questions? Thank you very much for
Yeah,
this
you're
report.
very welcome.
We're all very engaged.
I love it.
As you can tell. So we appreciate this.
I really, yeah. it's-
High-level overview.
It's good discussion. So then the next item I wanted to bring up is that our Neighborhood Business Services Monrovia Area Partnership Program will be hosting a annual block party. This is at Julian Fisher Park on Saturday, June 21st. I have flyers for each of the commissioners. I want to let anyone at home who's watching come out. It's going to take place at the park from 5 to 8 p.m. It's for children, adults, all are welcome. There'll be food, music, different activities for both youth and adults. A lot of fun. So we all are looking forward to everyone coming out to that.
It's always a great event.
Always
Been
a great-
several times.
Yep.
Sherry, isn't there a wildfire prevention or talk coming up, or did that happen already?
I will need to find out. I don't know. Yeah.
There's like
I-
a Zoom workshop or something, I think.
Not quite sure I saw something. I wanted to say it was farther.
I'll
in the
find
month.
out and
But
send an email to the commission.
Coming up, it's great information, I assume, and we saw it firsthand.
Very good. And then last but not least, very sad to note that our Commissioner Bill Sheaf will be retiring. Tonight is his last commission meeting. It's been a pleasure working with you. Oh, oh, oh. So, well, Bill started in 2019. I think it was right before the pandemic. He came in to replace Coulter Wynn, and you served several years on the Art and Public Places Committee, saw the fruition of several city treasures, art on the boxes, the Monrovia Bears. You participated in the Route 66 mural. I think you saw, when we originally took the Arroyo and Station Square South projects through in 2018, we had to bring them back, and you were on the commission when we brought them back and saw them with their new developers. Sometimes the projects change developers.
Just a wonderful experience. I've gained so much knowledge here. It's just amazing. I'm really in awe. And fellow commissioners as well.
Well, we appreciate you.
It's been my pleasure.
So
Been a small town. We'll see you.
I know, we'll see you.
you
Yeah,
have
we-
to come visit us.
Yeah, I'm not totally done yet, but I plan to find other ways to serve the community.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you very much for your contribution, Bill. And you predate my time on the commission, but I've learned a lot from you while I've been here, and I appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you.
So with that concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much, Sherry. Do we have any other reports or announcements from the commission? All right. This wraps up my year as first year as chair of the commission, and I've thoroughly thank you, thoroughly enjoyed being chair, and I hope you all have enjoyed it as well.
Thank you, and back to the bleacher seats with us.
Yep.
Back to the bleacher seats.
Exactly. All right. So with that, our next regular meeting is scheduled for July 9th, 2025. And this meeting is now adjourned at 8:21 p.m. I'll get my last gavel
Oh, yeah.
wrap in.
All right.